Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound Podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with the elbows of knowledge. And UFC 328 is here. Chimaev taking on Strickland in the main event. And as always, we're here to break the whole thing down, starting off in the early prelims, heading to the main event. Carlos's breakdowns are in. And let's kick things off in the early prelim opener. And let's get this thing rolling. All right. Early prelim opener here for UFC 328. We've got Clayton Carpenter taking on Jose Ochoa. Give me Ochoa in this one, but I do like the addition to the UFC of Clayton Carpenter. He's definitely got a good skill set. Former Golden Gloves champion. He's got nice boxing, keeps a nice tight high guard. He does lack a little bit of head movement. He will blast kicks up the middle, and he has decent grappling as well. Nice takedowns, very fundamental takedowns, single legs, double legs. He'll shoot that blast double out at range. He will go for body lock takedowns and trips, and he's got pretty high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but here against Ochoa, I think Ochoa should be able to have the differential in terms of the striking. He's definitely faster on the feet, stands southpaw. And I think when it comes to the striking here, that Clayton Carpenter doesn't move his head enough for me. Ochoa has a lot of power. I think he's going to have the power advantage in this matchup, and I think he'll have the speed advantage. Carpenter stays very fundamental in his striking, keeps a nice tight high guard, but at times he can be caught coming into the pocket. He'll have nice kicks at range here that he can use, and I think that he'll be best served in this fight to mix in some grappling. We saw against Ochoa's last opponent, Asu Omabayev. He took that fight on short notice, so no shame in losing to Asu Omabayev, but Asu was able to take him down and control him enough to be able to win rounds, and I think that's going to be how Carpenter's going to have to approach this one. He needs to go in for takedowns, use the wrestling, and get top control. I do think, though, that Ochoa obviously training at Shooter Box, Diego Lima, with guys like Charles Oliveira, that aggressive style, that very good Brazilian jiu-jitsu, he's not going to be worried about Carpenter's grappling. He's going to be able to create scrambles, throwing up submissions, defending takedowns. He does a good job of stuffing the head if people shoot for the legs, and I think he's going to be able to defend the takedowns here and keep this one on the feet. And Ochoa is a guy that on the feet, he doesn't throw in a ton of volume, but when he hits you, you know about it. He'll throw one shot at a time, and he's looking really for his openings. And I think a guy like Carpenter leaves far too many openings when he gets overzealous coming into the pocket. So give me Ochoa here. I think he stuffs the takedowns. And let's face it, people are going to look at that last performance against Asu Omabayev and say, hey, he lost his last fight. Asu is a top 10 guy. He has great wrestling, and Ochoa took that fight on short notice. And Ochoa might be 1-2 inside the UFC, but he did lose to Lona Kavanaugh, who looks fantastic at this point. He's just beaten Brandon Moreno on short notice over in Mexico for a main event. So I think both of those losses have aged well, and I think in terms of the skill set in this matchup here, training at Shooter Box should be able to give him the advantage to create scrambles. I think his takedown defense has actually held up pretty well against Asu Omabayev, and I think Carpenter doesn't have the same wrestling that Asu does. And on the feet, I think he hits that a little bit harder. I think that the shots will end up wearing most of the damage on Carpenter, and I do think that Carpenter is very hittable when he comes into the pocket. So give me Ochoa here to get this one done and kick off UFC 328 with a bang. And let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to go with Jose Ochoa to get it done. They're both kind of, just starting out their careers in the UFC, and they're having a little bit of a bad break. They're fighting some good competition. I just feel that Ochoa has been fighting the better competition. I do think that they're both pretty well-rounded. I think that no one's just going to hold him on the ground. I think that they don't have the high level of wrestling to hurry up and get right back up, after being taken down, because both have been kind of controlled on the ground. Both by very solid wrestlers as well, but the problem being is that's what makes me feel that they're in the same boat. Like on the feet, they tend to give a little bit of resistance. Both of them can open up a little bit on the feet, so that's good. But in the wrestling department, they both have the same ability to get back to the feet, but they both have the same ability to get taken down and somewhat controlled by higher level guys. So I just feel that Ochoa's lost to the higher level of guys. He's actually fought the higher level of guy and hung in there and gave him a little bit of hell while he was there. Probably landed a strike or two that nobody thought he would. It made him, and against Cody Djorden, who's just got a big victory himself lately, he's also done very good against guys like him as well. So I'm not saying that the MMA math adds up. I'm just saying that I think their styles are kind of close, like their level of fighting is kind of close. So I just feel that Ochoa, besides fighting the better competition, is probably a little bit looser on the feet as well. Like in the fight in general, I feel Ochoa is a little bit more loose and a little bit more confident to try different things in a fight. Whether it leaves him exposed to counters, whether it leaves him exposed to takedowns, he's a little bit more comfortable in his abilities in letting it go. Whereas Clayton Carpenter, he does everything correct standing up from a technical point of view, like the technique, I mean, it looks good. And wrestling, he does the exact same thing. It looks good, but I just think that he doesn't have that comfort level yet to open up and take some chances and try to take some risk. Whereas Ochoa does have that, and that also gets him in trouble as well. So I feel that Ochoa is a little bit more comfortable in his skin and in his abilities. So I think that's what's going to put him over the top to get it done. And I do think that out of the two, he's a little bit more creative. He's probably a little bit sharper of the two when it comes to striking as well. So I'm going to take Ochoa to get it done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Baisangur Susurkaev taking on Djorden Santos. And I got to say, man, I'm reasonably high on Susurkaev. I'm just a little bit worried about his openings of fights. He seems to take kind of the first round to really get going. He seems to underestimate a lot of his opponents, and I think at some point that's going to get him knocked out. He tends to be a little bit of a showman in there. He wants to play to the crowd. He wants to kind of taunt and point fingers and kind of just be that showman to the crowd. And I think sometimes, that can be a fighter's detriment at sometimes. At 25 years old, I still think he has a lot to learn, but the guy has good wrestling. We see that at times. His entries, his body lock takedowns, his ability to get fights to the ground is definitely not something to ignore. He has decent kicks on the feet. He'll light up the legs. He'll go to the head kick. He'll attack the body with those front kicks that he'll attack the liver with. And I think that's going to be a great set of skills to use here against Santos. Santos is more of a volume boxer. He doesn't tend to throw a ton of kicks. He'll just walk you down with heavy pressure, just kind of lighten you up with the jab, throw in the right hand, and he can really put up some serious volume. We saw that in the Ozzy Diaz fight, that even though he was able to get that victory in that fight, he was able to really put up a ton of volume. And I just worry in this particular matchup here with Susurkaev that he's just not going to take Santos very seriously. He's going to get caught and then ultimately end up losing his winning streak here of 11-0 and end up losing his O. But I'm going to go with Susurkaev. I think that he's going to be able to light up Santos's lead leg from the outside. I think he's going to be able to really attack the body, which Santos doesn't tend to defend too much. He tends to keep his hands very high, defending the head. And I think Susurkaev can really mix in his kicks here and ultimately land some sort of shot to the body and maybe put Santos out. And he can also fall back on that wrestling. Santos' takedown defense isn't necessarily the best. I think Susurkaev's control on the ground needs a little bit of work, but he can mix in and threaten those takedowns in this one. But, minus 650, a huge favorite on this card. He'll probably be closer to minus 1,000 by the time that this fight opens, or at least Saturday night. He'll be a bigger favorite. I do like Susurkaev. I think he's got a nice upward ceiling in terms of the UFC, as long as he comes in and starts to take these fights a little bit seriously. Santos is a guy, that trains over an American Top Team. They're not over there playing around, messing around. It's a great camp to be at. We know that he can put up volume. We know that he can take a big punch from a big opponent. And I just worry that Susurkaev is just going to get overconfident and get caught. But give me Baisangur Susurkaev here to get this one done. I'm going to say that he gets another stoppage victory here, maybe late in the second round, to the body with one of those kicks. Let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
Okay, in this one, I'm taking Susurkaev to get it done. I don't really see too much of a breakdown on this, so I'll do this quick. Susurkaev is pretty much better everywhere. Technically, he's got big power. His punches, his strikes aren't wide. He has good grappling, good body control once he's got you down there. And somebody like Djorden Santos, he's a little wild. He swings overextends on everything, trying to get his opponents hurt with shots while he's telegraphing every movement. And somebody like that is just going to be, it's target practice for Susurkaev. So I feel like it's just a matter of time before he stuns him, hurts him, or, gets the submission. But, Susurkaev is his own worst nightmare. If that's going to be the case, if Santos pulls off the upset, it's just if he's playing with his food, he's not going to get it done. But, there's nothing that's going to keep this guy down right now at this point. You know, he's on a little bit of a tear, and he's looking good. So I'm going to take Susurkaev to get it done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Pat Sabatini taking on William Gomis. And let's talk a little bit about this matchup here. Striker versus grappler. Sabatini knows exactly what he wants to come into fights and do. He wants to be able to get you to the ground. He wants to implement his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and his high-level grappling. And I would argue he's one of the better grapplers inside of the UFC. When it comes to his striking, obviously he can be a little bit chinny at times. He has been caught in the past by Diego Lopez and Jackson. But I do worry in this particular fight here that if he can't get the fight to the ground, Gomis is going to be the much cleaner, much better striker. And it's tough at times to be able to get these taller guys for the division, especially at 6 foot here for William Gomis taking on 5'8" of Pat Sabatini. It could be a little bit difficult for him to get this fight to the ground. The one kind of factor in terms of the tape study here is that when you go back and look at William Gomez's last fight against Robert Ruchella, not necessarily known for being this high-level wrestler, was able to go 2 for 2 on takedowns against Gomis, ducking underneath the shot, getting into the body lock trip takedowns, and ultimately dragging Gomis over that back leg, and ultimately getting the fight to the ground. And Pat Sabatini, once he gets you to the ground, he is like glue. He will control you. He will transition from, kind of side control into mount, beat you up, and ultimately find the submission and at least be able to win rounds with his high-level control on the ground. So this fight's really just going to come down to, can Pat Sabatini get the takedowns here? Very opportunistic takedowns. He's going to need them. Gomis is a guy that stands very, very square, and that's why I'm going to pick Pat Sabatini here. In the striking, Gomis is no secret. He's going to be the better striker, but at times he can stand very square to his opponent, looking to land that front kick up the middle. He will throw a lot of kicks as well, sometimes blind kicks. That's going to give Sabatini the opportunity to catch them in order to go for takedowns. And I think in terms of the power in the hands, Gomis is not necessarily known for being able to put people's lights out with the power, with the striking. He's more of a decision merchant. Not to say that he couldn't catch, Sabatini on the feet. I just think that, Sabatini's fought guys who have got a lot of pop in their hands. Diego Lopez, Damian Jackson, guys that do carry a little bit more sting. And I think Gomis is a guy that just kind of flicks shots out there. He just looks to touch, just looks to score points, looks to get volume out there. I do think he has good takedown defense, but an opportunistic takedown from Pat Sabatini is definitely very different to a guy like Robert Ruchella. Ruchella doesn't have the wrestling. He's good on the ground, good with the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but we saw Gomis was able to get up after a minute or so. Pat Sabatini's going to glue you to the ground and ultimately find the submission. So give me Pat Sabatini here. Opportunistic takedowns. I think he does a better job of tucking his chin here than he's done in the past. I think that's the secret to this 3-fight win streak. He's staying a little bit more defensively sound in the striking, kind of using the opportunities he presents in the fight to go for the takedowns. He's not necessarily just spamming takedowns in a panic. And I think Gomis doesn't necessarily have the pop in his hands to be able to keep Pat Sabatini off of him. Gomis is a guy that if he's kind of backed up, we saw it in the Hyder Emil fight. If he's backed up, he will, kind of dart around on the outside up against the fence, which I think is going to open more opportunities for Pat Sabatini's takedowns. I think he needs to be the one pushing forward. And I actually think here that Pat Sabatini is going to throw some sort of overhand or some sort of shot down the middle to get Gomis kind of thinking about the striking for him to level change and ultimately get the takedown here. So give me Pat Sabatini in a slight lean, not super confident. Let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Pat Sabatini to get this one done. I think Gomis is going to have to land some type of a bomb to get Sabatini out of there early or whenever in the fight. And Sabatini, he's not extremely durable. So it doesn't have to be a big shot. It just has to be clean. It's got to be on the right spot. And Gomis is a pretty good striker, and he's able to do that. And, does he have, great pinpoint accuracy? No, but his strikes are accurate enough where he can time something, he can land something if he can, get the right timing on Sabatini. I could see Gomis landing something and getting the finish, but I do see Gomis having to, once he's hurt, just go after him and get the finish. I don't see him landing one shot, one and done, but I do see the fact that if he doesn't do that, Sabatini is going to be able to, I can see him throwing a couple jabs just to close the distance, coming in behind it, stepping in, and forcing Gomis to have to either be offensive, throw a 1-2, throw a jab, or throw a kick, or a knee, something to back off Sabatini. And then he's going to grab that leg and he's going to take you down, or he's going to slip underneath that that jab or that 1-2, and then he's going to get into the body and get that takedown anyway. Because once he gets his hands claps around the body, it's over, or even around the waist, around the leg, because he's just going to take that single leg and get you to the ground. He's got that ability to do so, and once you're down there, he's got great top pressure. He's got very slick movement. He stays on you. He's like human crazy glue. He's going to be very difficult to get any bit of space on you. And for the most part, I just feel that Gomis is going to have to be a sniper. And in those small situations where he can at least extend his arm, like by framing off somebody like Sabatini, he's going to have to be very good at throwing some elbows on the inside and some knees and landing to the body, landing to the head, trying to land something to get Sabatini to back off, because the moment he backs off, that's when you know he hurt. So I'm going to go with Sabatini. I just think he's going to keep this fight so close in such tight quarters that Gomis isn't going to have a chance to get off. And if that happens, I think Sabatini can do that in every round and get this one done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Roman Kopylov taking on Marco Tulio. And I got to say, this is a very 50-50 fight here, but give me Kopylov. I think he's got a little bit more tools in the arsenal here to give Tulio something to think about. Just go talk about Tulio's last fight. He lost to Christian Leroy Duncan, and the reason he had a lot of trouble with Christian Leroy Duncan was because in that fight, he's only really throwing boxing combinations. He wants to trade in the pocket. He doesn't throw a ton of kicks. Shooter box fighter that isn't known for the ground game and the wrestling. It's mostly just throwing hands on the feet. He wants to have extended combinations in the pocket. Christian Leroy Duncan can dart around the outside, throwing teeps, throwing kicks. And in the clinch, I think Christian Leroy Duncan is a little bit better with the elbows, surprising spinning attacks as well, which is ended up what got Tulio caught. And I think that unorthodox, more athletic style really made Tulio struggle in that fight. He got caught, he got knocked out. And I think if you go back and look at the Tresean Gore performance as well, even though he looked impressive in that fight, he was getting touched up by Gore on the feet. And Gore's not necessarily known for being this outright, technical striker. So with the fact that he was getting touched up so much by Tresean Gore has me worried here against a guy like Roman Kopylov. Kopylov obviously coming off of back-to-back losses, but let's dive a little bit deeper into those. Gregory Rodriguez is no slouch in this division. He's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger, he's got the threat of the takedown, the high-level Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and the guy walks around at almost 225, 230 pounds. The fact that he can make middleweight is insane. So Kopylov, there's no shame in losing to Gregory Rodriguez. And you go back a little bit further and look at his loss to Paulo Costa. Costa is another guy that can blast kicks. He's on an ascendancy. He's looked good in that fight. And I think in that fight, Kopylov wanted to be more technical, but, Paulo Costa just hit that little bit harder. So everything he was doing, he was having that little bit more intent in the shots. And I think Roman Kopylov is a guy that he needs to be kind of a little bit more technical, a little bit more in terms of the back and forth exchanges, kind of picking and prodding and not necessarily getting swarmed. My one concern here is if Kopylov trades in the pocket with Tulio, Tulio could 100% get the knockout here and get the victory. But I think that Kopylov is the better wrestler. I think in this particular fight, his kicks are going to be a great weapon for Tulio to have to worry about. And I think those two weapons he's going to be able to kind of go back and forth with. And I think that's going to give him some success here. If he trades and kind of exchanges in the pocket with the boxing, it's going to be Marco Tulio all day. I think Roman Kopylov here coming off of back-to-back wins to high-level guys. This is a step down in competition against Marco Tulio. He's not looked good since joining the UFC. Even in the victory he had against Tresean Gore, he was getting touched up. And I think Kopylov, if you look at his fight against Chris Curtis is a guy that doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He's mostly just rolling and shelling up with punches, and he's not necessarily mixing in a ton of grappling. And in that fight, he was able to utilize a lot of his kicks. He was able to light up the body and the legs of Chris Curtis, and ultimately, kind of make Chris Curtis shell up. And I think if Kopylov uses a similar tactic here against Tulio, he'll be able to catch Tulio on the feet, who's not as defensively sound as a guy like Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis's boxing is much better. He rolls with punches much better. But I think Tulio is too willing to exchange and too hittable to be landing in the pocket and not worrying about the counters coming back at him from Kopylov. I think Kopylov can light up the legs from the outside, and I think if it comes to the grappling, Kopylov is probably the slightly better wrestler here. Tulio slows down as well. I think Kopylov's fought a little bit longer into fights, so give me Roman Kopylov here as the slight underdog. As long as he doesn't trade in the pocket, he'll be fine. Let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
In this one, I went a little back and forth on it because, Kopylov, obviously, he's a talent. He can be very difficult because of the speed, the ability. the technique on the feet. But I'm going to go with Marco Tulio in this one to get it done because, Kopylov's been on a bit of a skid. The last 2 fights were pretty tough against people like Robocop and Paulo Costa. He fought the Paulo Costa of old pretty much. That's how I look at it. Paulo Costa, the old one, fought that fight with Kopylov the way that he would have fought before he got knocked out by Izzy, and now he's looking good. But anyway, I just feel that if you impose yourself on someone like Kopylov and you show that his abilities aren't really that intimidating, so far it's shown that he's not going to push back. He's not going to pick it up another gear. He's going to kind of submit to you. He's going to stay on the feet, and he's going to look a little flashy, throwing like a spinning back kick, a wheel kick, or he's going to throw a spinning back fist or a flying knee or something. He's going to look sharp coming in and out, but he's not going to try to do any damage to you if you're trying to impose yourself on him. And I feel like someone like Tulio is trying to do that from the shoot the box background in the gym. That's it. He's going to be the aggressor, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to come. He wants to impose himself. He wants to come forward, and he wants to hit you with heavy shots everywhere, whether it's to the head, to the body, to the legs. That's what he wants to do. And, Roman Kopylov is very fleet of foot, so that's something Tulio's going to have to get a hold on. If I were him, I'd be ripping to the legs, ripping to the body very early. And Kopylov, one of the reasons why I feel like when you're trying to impose yourself on him with the striking, he kind of backs off of you is because in one of his fights that I saw, actually 2 of them that I've seen where he was getting outstruck on the feet, he actually went for takedowns, and that's the thing is that's not what he wants to do. That's not why the UFC signed him. That's not why he got to this point. It's because on the regionals he's ripping through people, and that's how he got that look. And if you're starting to go right to takedowns, and when I say that is you can always add extra facets to your game and improve yourself, but when you do that and that's not something that you've done, you're uncomfortable doing, you're doing it out of self-preservation. You're trying to survive in the ring. And if you're going to try to do that, I can see Tulio just imposing himself on him and Kopylov just, whether he goes for a shot or he just backs off and doesn't throw as heavy anymore throughout the fight. He's done that as well against Paulo Costa and RoboCop. So I think Tulio can get the same response from him. Tulio's a big guy for the weight class. He's a heavy hitter. And he can take a shot here and there, too. He did get dropped by, who was that? Christian Leroy Duncan, that's correct. And he was able to, he wasn't able to bounce back from that. But I don't think Kopylov has that kind of a threat level of athleticism and power as Christian Leroy Duncan. So it's a close one, but I'm going to take Marco Tulio to get it done. I think just his aggressive style and nature is going to be enough to impose himself on Kopylov and possibly get the decision.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Djorden taking on Jim fucking Miller. Jim Miller still back at it here at 42 years old, still fighting in the UFC. But give me Djorden here in this one. I think it's more of a wrestler-boxer style that beats a guy like Jim Miller on the feet. Obviously, Jim Miller, great guillotine, great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, lacks the wrestling to get this one to the ground, in my opinion. And I think Gordon's wrestling is going to be able to dictate where this fight takes place. On the feet, both guys very live, carry a lot of power, both very fundamental in the striking, not necessarily known for one-punch power, but good timing, good counters. And I think Djorden here's ability to just have that little bit of youth, a little bit of pop still in his punches is going to carry him through the challenge here of Jim Miller. I am a little bit worried about Jim Miller's guillotine here. If Gordon does shoot sloppy takedowns, there is a world where Jim Miller can snatch up that neck and ultimately find the guillotine upset here. I don't think that Djorden should be this big of a favorite in this style matchup. I think this one should be a little bit closer to a pick'em, maybe minus 200, minus 150 for Djorden. I think Jim Miller's definitely an outside underdog here, but I don't trust him here at 42. He has nice calf kicks that he can light up the lead leg of Gordon, but outside of that, I think Gordon should have a success in the boxing combinations. He carries a little bit more sting in the hands, and I think he can also have the better wrestling exchanges and dictate where this fight takes place. So give me Djorden here to get this one done. Although I do like Jim Miller, I'm going to be rooting for him. I think Djorden gets this one done. Let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to have to go with Djorden to get it done. I mean, not basically just because of the age, difference. I'd love to see Jim Miller get it done, but I do feel that in that fight against Chase Hooper, the longer the fight went and the pace it's going to have to go, Jim Miller, you could see that he was hurt and he was struggling just a little bit just to keep up with the pace of Hooper. And Hooper does keep a good pace, but so does Jared Gordon. And he's never really backing down. He's always staying busy. If he's throwing strikes and he's getting you backing up and you go up against the cage, he's going to be on you. He's going to be clinching. He's going to be trying to get some bit of a takedown. He's not really trying to get it to the ground, but he's going to clinch you to put his weight on you to close the distance, because fighting inside, going to the body, coming up top with elbows, that's all tiring, fighting in close quarters. And Jim Miller, I don't think he has that push to get through the attrition part of that, but I do feel that he can hurt Jared Gordon because he loves to attack the lead leg, loves the calf kick, has a good left hook, and a good right hook. And his wrestling is phenomenal. He can get you to the ground. Mostly his jiu-jitsu is better than his wrestling, even though he's a great college wrestler as well. I do feel that this fight isn't going to get to the ground. I think Jared Gordon's going to keep this fight standing. I think it's going to help him more. He moves more on the feet than Jim Miller. Jim Miller fights. He's not flat-footed, but he's not up on the balls of his feet. He's not bouncing in and out. He's there to be hit. He's there to be countered. He does have good defense. He does keep his arms up, his high guard. And someone like Jared Gordon, too, he does keep a high guard. And he's going to have to watch out for that lead leg, because Jim Miller loves to attack the lead leg first. He likes to compromise his opponents and then work from there. Jared Gordon, they're both smart fighters. I just feel that he's going to have the cardio advantage the longer this fight goes. And I love Jim Miller, man. I'd hate to see him lose in a bad way. I don't want to see him get finished, but I do think Jared Gordon is going to be he's going to have the youth on his side on this fight. He's going to have the movement, the cardio. I'm going to take Jared Gordon to get it done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Grant Dawson taking on Mateusz Rebecki. And I got to say, not super confident in either one of these gentlemen to get this one done. Let's talk about Grant Dawson. Obviously, relentless pressure. We know what Dawson wants to do. He wants to come in. He wants to take you down. He wants to chain wrestle and look for the submission. He's talked a lot about being a little bit more active when he's in dominant positions, looking for ground and pound and looking for a finish. But in a lot of his fights, his chin has failed him. Let's face it. Even if you go back and look at that Bobby Green performance, he took that jab straight from Bobby Green, got dropped and got finished in that fight. And it doesn't look like his chin really holds up in a lot of fights. So Grant Dawson, even though he has a high decorated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and has good wrestling, good pace and good pressure, at any moment somebody could touch that chin and ultimately put him out. And when you talk about Mateusz Rebecki, both of these guys have trained at American Top Team. So Rebecki has actually moved gyms from American Top Team over to a gym over in Poland. And I do worry that Rebecki here is going to be not able to get Grant Dawson off of him in the wrestling exchanges. Dawson, a little bit bigger at 5'10", 6-inch reach advantage. Rebecki doesn't necessarily have that one-punch power that a lot of people have to worry about, but it doesn't necessarily take much to put Dawson on his ass. So it kind of makes me a little bit worried here that Rebecki is going to get kind of overly aggressive. He's going to overextend and he's going to get taken down. But on the other hand, he also might get extremely aggressive, get in the face of Dawson and land a big shot that's going to be enough to put a chinny Grant Dawson down. So not super confident from me. I'm going to go with Grant Dawson here to get this one done. I think Rebecki is a guy that we've seen get taken down in the past. Mutabek Urabai was able to take him down. I believe Ferreira was able to take him down in their fight as well. And I just think that Rebecki is a guy that at times overextends. And in this particular matchup, he's going to be the smaller guy. He's like a little ball of muscle. But I think once he gets into the grappling exchanges, he's going to want to grapple with Dawson. I'm sure that these guys have trained or sparred together or rolled together at an American Top Team. And I feel like Grant Dawson probably got the better of those exchanges. And I do think that Dawson's wrestling is a little bit better than Rebecki's, but not super confident. As I mentioned, Grant Dawson's chin can fail him at any point, and I do think that Rebecki could definitely bite down on his mouthpiece and really go for that finish, especially early, not having to worry about the takedowns as he might be able to find that chin. But give me Grant Dawson here to get the slight edge in the grappling and ultimately wear him down with ground and pound and find the submission. Let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to go with Rebecki to get this one done. I do think Dawson does have good timing on his takedowns. He'll get you swinging, and then Dawson does what he does best. He changes levels and shoots and gets the fight to the mat. And, he stays very busy while he's on the ground, whether it's he's looking for submissions or looking to grab, get a little ground and pound and soften you up a bit or get the finish. He has good top pressure, but he does need to stay busy, and by staying busy, what that means is besides looking for the submission, he's trying to change position and strike while he's on the ground. And I understand jiu-jitsu. They're keeping their body tight to you. They're filling all the gaps. But what Dawson does is he hovers. And just like a wrestler, they teach you that when your first day in jiu-jitsu, keep your hips down. That's what you want to do. And although Dawson does keep good shoulder pressure, what he does is he hovers a lot, and I could see Rebecki being able to get back to his feet. So it's going to force Dawson to have to go for another takedown and, keep repeatedly doing that. And at some point, I feel like he's going to get just a little bit more tired. And Rebecki, as soon as he gets back to his feet, they're not going to be pretty. Everybody sees how he throws those strikes, but they're going to be heavy. And if he starts catching or tagging Dawson a little bit, Dawson could be a little bit chinny. And if he doesn't get put out, he's going to get hurt. And I think that's going to be the game plan as Rebecki is stuff the takedowns as much as you can. Try to avoid getting any damage on the feet because Dawson isn't a slouch on the feet either. He just knows that he wants to get you to the ground, but he does look sharp on the feet. So try to avoid too much damage. When that takedown comes, try to stifle him with those hips and try to peel him up, and then make sure you punish him. Get some separation. Punish him on the feet strike, and then the uglier you can make the fight look is the better it's going to be for Rebecki. And if Rebecki is going to try to make this fight ugly, Dawson has no way of slowing it down. So he's going to be frantically looking for another takedown, and Rebecki's going to know it. So to me, I think the pressure of Rebecki and the fact that he's willing to turn this fight into a mess, make it a little chaotic, make it not technical at all, make it a battle of wills, I think Rebecki's going to get this one done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Joel Alvarez taking on Yaroslav Amosov here. And I got to say, originally I was going to go with the Alvarez side. Obviously very big, even for 170 at 6'3". He did originally fight at 155, where he was just running through 155. It's very big for the division, but I got to say, I think Joel Alvarez is a little bit of a weight bully, and he's not necessarily looked as good at 170. When he took on Vicente Luque in that last fight, Luque was able to win some of the exchanges on the feet, and he was able to land against Alvarez. And I think in this particular matchup against Amosov, a natural 170-pounder, four-time Sambo world champion, that I think he's going to be a little bit better everywhere. Obviously, we'll talk about Amosov in a moment, but Joel Alvarez in that fight against Vicente Luque, he was having, kind of his chin tagged at moments against a guy in Vicente Luque that I'm not particularly high on now at 170. Obviously, he gets the odd victory here and there by front choke, but Alvarez should have a lot better striking, in my opinion, in that matchup. And he went to a decision. He wasn't able to get the kind of chinny Vicente Luque out of there, and that kind of has me worried here about his power at 170. Even though he is still tall and still big and rangy for the division, I just don't think that guys necessarily have too much difficulty with the power of Alvarez here at 170 compared to the guys at 155. And I think Joel Alvarez is a guy that, he has basic striking, but relies heavily on the fact that he's the bigger, stronger, harder hitting 155er. So I think now moving up to 170, I think guys are going to take his shots much better. And I think a guy like Amosov here with that Sambo background is going to be able to implement his own grappling, his own wrestling. And he's a guy that obviously has moved over from Bellator, come over here. He's beaten guys like Logan Storley. An impressive career up until that one setback that he had. He was 27-0 up until that point, and he has very fundamental striking. He keeps stuff very, very fundamental, very tight, very crisp. He'll throw the odd head kick. He'll throw a nice 1-2 down the pipe. He has great boxing, and his ability to kind of get to the legs and get to the body lock takedowns here and implement his grappling is something that I could see. I think Alvarez off of his back is very dangerous with the long limbs and his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but I think Amosov is going to have all the success he needs on the ground, taking Alvarez down, wearing on him, beating him up. And on the feet, I think that Alvarez's shots aren't going to hit and damage Amosov as much as he thinks that they are here at 170. So give me Amosov here to get this one done, and let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Amosov to get this one done. Joel Alvarez, he's doing... He moved up to 170. He's looking great. Maybe the weight cut down to 155 is what was tiring him a little bit. And maybe he's a little stronger. Maybe he's a little bit of a heavier puncher. Maybe his cardio's there even more. And he's able to handle the wrestling and the takedowns that's going to come at him from Amosov. Amosov, striking-wise, I don't think he can stand only with Alvarez. I think Alvarez is a little too... he's a little too technical. His technique's too tight. He's good strategically, but he's in no hurry when he's striking, and he's not pushing the pace. He's just kind of stalking you, and he's throwing a couple strikes here and there, and they're accurate. And that's the thing with Alvarez. He's very accurate. But when you look in comparison to Amosov's loss to Jason Jackson, I love the nickname, the ass-kicking machine, what happened was the fact that Jackson was a mover. Jackson's got good technique too. He's got, good crisp striking, just like Alvarez does. It looks different because Jackson's going to throw 1 or 2 strikes at a time, and he's just moving. And when he comes in, he's going to throw a couple, and then he's out. So he's going to throw in combinations when he's in there. Alvarez is going to kind of walk you down, and he's going to throw some strikes. And I feel like that's going to be easier for somebody like Amosov to maybe slip a shot, maybe even take a jab, get inside. Now, what Alvarez likes to do is he likes to, throw leg kicks. He likes to throw kicks to the body. He likes to work up top. He'll work every level of the body that he can, but it's just the fact that he's not moving. He's not on the ball of his foot. He's not bouncing around. He's not going lateral side to side, in and out. And for that reason, Amosov's going to be able to get close to him. He's going to be able to work his way in. He's not going to have to – he can dive for a takedown and know that Alvarez is going to be right there. And even if he doesn't get it and Alvarez tends to sprawl, he's going to know that if I just push through, drive through, I'm going to be on top. Because that's what Tsarukyan did. He was able to just use speed and his quickness and his strength to just bull right through Alvarez. Now, that was a long time ago. And there's a different weight class, and Alvarez is a bigger man now too. But I do feel that Amosov's a bigger man. He's a good wrestler. He uses good technique. And I do feel the fact that Alvarez is not a mover, that there's nothing really for Amosov to worry about. He's just got to worry about the strikes. And the fact that Alvarez doesn't throw in combination, once he slips one, he knows he doesn't have to worry about another one coming at him. So for that reason, I think I'm going to take Amosov. Alvarez can get this one done. I think it's a little closer than I'm making it sound, but I do think the fact that he doesn't bounce around, he's a little bit more stationary when he strikes. It looks good. It looks great. I do like Alvarez. I think he's a good fighter. I think he's got some good upside. But I think the lack of movement against someone who's a wrestler who's not the fastest guy in the world, I think that's going to cause problems for you. Because if movement causes problems for Amosov, I think Amosov is probably just a little bit quicker on the feet than Alvarez, and I think that's how he's going to get this one done.
And next up at UFC 328, Ateba Gautier taking on Ozzy Diaz. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Give me Ateba Gautier here. This is pretty much the easiest one on the card. Short breakdown here from me. Ozzy Diaz is far too slow, far too plodding, and obviously he did come down from 205 here to middleweight. And I just think that Ateba Gautier is a problem. Obviously, we know the knockout power in the hands. He's very measured on the feet. He's not a guy that swings very wild. He doesn't have big looping shots, but we know that he packs a punch and he can rip to the body and come upstairs. And I just think it's just going to be a matter of time in this one before Ateba Gautier is able to land the big shots on Ozzy Diaz. Diaz doesn't have a ton of head movement. He has been knocked out in the past, and he did have a nice, back and forth performance against Djorden Santos, who we saw earlier on the card. But I just don't think it's going to be enough. He's not going to be able to mix in the takedowns. Ateba Gautier has great takedown defense. This should be pretty much a knockout victory here for Ateba Gautier. Mark my words, confident in this one. I think a lot of people will be this week for Ateba to find another knockout here against Ozzy Diaz. Let's see if Carlos agrees with me or he's going with the upset.
In this one, I'm going to take Gautier to get it done. I think Gautier looks sharp. He's strong. Takedown defense. He's explosive. He's got power. He's fighting a guy that's very hittable as Ozzy Diaz. And Diaz, he can bounce on his toes, but he doesn't really go anywhere. He kind of just bounces in place to get warm and get a rhythm. And, his striking, he's not somebody that's going to catch you and rock you unless you're like dead tired. And, one of his fights was a slugfest back and forth with Santos. And, the only reason it looked like he was hurting him, Santos, in that fight is because Santos was dead tired too. It was a sloppy fight, and they look sloppy from start to finish. They throw wide, they throw slow. They're both really not very talented fighters, but I think Santos is the better of the two. But it doesn't mean that he's a good fighter. I think Ozzy Diaz took a couple shots from him, but that's going to be nothing like taking a shot from Ateba Gautier here. Gautier will just kind of use his physicality in the clinch and just kind of impose himself on Diaz. I wish there was more of a breakdown to it, but Diaz has been hurt by lesser fighters in the past, so to me this is a no-brainer. I'm going to take Gautier to get this one done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got King Green taking on Jeremy Stephens. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. This one should be an absolute banger, depending on what Bobby Green shows up. Obviously, we'll talk about Jeremy Stephens in a moment, but King Green's been on a resurgency here, 2-fight win streak. And if you go back and look at that fight against Gibson, he was willing to mix in takedowns. And we see that from Bobby Green or King Green at times, a willingness to mix in the grappling. Other times he stands and bangs on the feet, he carries his hands very low, and he'll kind of have that shit talk mentality where, Roy Jones Jr. style, hands low, and relying a lot on speed, countering, and head movement in order to stay defensively sound. The problem with this particular matchup here against Jeremy Stephens is if Green comes in and mixes in takedowns, I definitely think that he should be the rightful favorite, the big favorite, because he will come in, he will wrestle, and Stephens struggles to defend takedowns, especially at this point in his career. Stephens is a guy that stands very square in his stance. He wants to stand and trade with you, and his mentality towards fighting, especially at this point in his career, is last man standing. Let's stand and trade. Let's get in the pocket. Let's see who's the last guy standing. And the problem with that in mixed martial arts is guys will level change on you. They'll mix in kicks, and they'll really change up the game plan once he has success trading with you in the pocket. So Stephens has to worry about the takedowns from Bobby Green. I think I give the slight edge and speed to King Green. I think in terms of the power, I have to give it to Stevenson, which is why I'm a little bit concerned here that Stephens is going to be able to trade on the feet and land on Bobby Green, who has his hands down and kind of worries a little bit too much about shit talking and not staying defensively sound. I'm going to ever so slightly lean to Bobby Green here. If he comes in and he mixes in the takedowns, he could definitely have success here against Stephens, but trading in the pocket is going to get him caught here against a harder hitting Jeremy Stephens. And even if you go and look at his last two fights, fighting Mike Perry in Bare Knuckle FC is where he thrives. That's where he shines, is that back and forth trading in the pocket, not worrying about takedowns, not worrying about kicks, just getting in there and having a brawl with the hands. And even if you go back and look at his previous fight against Mason Jones in MMA, he was having success trading in the pocket until Mason Jones mixed in the takedowns and kind of threw kicks, which Stephens isn't necessarily used to having to, kind of block over at Bare Knuckle FC. So King can mix things in here. Green can do a good job of mixing in the takedowns and throwing off-time shots that he's not used to having to worry about. But I think here that King Green is going to be able to get this one done with the speed advantage, with the takedowns, and ultimately find the unanimous decision victory here. But not super confident as Jeremy Stephens does carry power. Let's see who Carlos has got in this matchup.
Okay, in this fight, I'm going to take King Green to get it done. I do think that, Jeremy Stephens is pretty much, this is going to be a boxing match. I don't think he's going to be looking to use any bit of wrestling or grappling, and I don't think he's going to be throwing in too many kicks because against Mason Jones, he hasn't done that, and that's probably because, he's been doing bare knuckle boxing for a while, so you do what you train to do, and he's probably been using a lot more of the hands, and he's been happy with that, but you're not going to have to worry about it going to the ground. But the reason why I'm taking King Green in this one is because it's going to be a boxing match. Jeremy Stephens is not a guy that throws in combination. If you're going to throw against Green, you have to throw in combination. He's going to move his head out of the first one, the second one. Doesn't really bring his hands up, but likes to stay in front of you. Doesn't move his feet, but likes to use a little bit of side to side, a little bob and weave head movement. Likes to pull back every now and again. And if you're throwing combinations against somebody like that, and you've seen it in the past, like Green gets caught and he goes down. And it's not because he's getting old, or it's not because he's not skilled. He's fighting with his hands down, and he's using his speed, his athleticism. And right now he still has pretty decent reaction time. But, you can tell he's slowing down a little bit. But even if he was young and, he was a killer and he fights with his hands down, and you're going to pull back and you're going to lean side to side and you're going to try to slip, you're going to get caught if somebody throws more than one or two punches at a time. And that's just how Jeremy Stephens fights. He doesn't, it's good to clean up. And when you say clean up, that means throw the hook, whether it's the right or the left hook. And he doesn't do that. And most MMA guys don't do that. And if they throw a one, if they throw a two, they don't throw the hook after it. They just throw a couple of straights because they're trying to go forward and they're trying to get you. Nobody likes to clean up at the end of the combination. And if you don't do that against somebody like Green, you're never going to catch them. So I'm going to take King Green to get it done based on the fact that I feel this is going to be a striking match. And I feel that, it's going to favor Green if it stays that way.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Sean Brady taking on Joaquin Buckley. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Give me Sean Brady in this one. If you go back and look at Joaquin Buckley's recent performance against Kamaru Usman, a lot of people had him obviously as a big favorite in that one. They thought he was going to be able to come in and knock out or at least beat Kamaru Usman on the feet, defending the takedowns. And the blueprint was right there. Kamaru Usman came out. He was able to get the takedowns. He was able to defend a lot of the striking kind of onslaughts of Joaquin Buckley, get those takedowns, take away a lot of the power and a lot of the sting in those shots of Buckley on the feet. And Buckley didn't have an answer to defending those takedowns. And I think if you look at Sean Brady's overall skill set as a high-level grappler, a guy that has, kind of a very wide back, a big set of shoulders, his ability to be able to come and get fighters to the ground, control them and submit them is the exact game plan and the exact strategy he needs for this fight against Joaquin Buckley. Buckley's very live early for a knockout. He always carries a lot of power, but he doesn't set up his shots very well. He's not a technical striker by any means. He really just capitalizes on moments with powerful shots. He's not setting up those shots by capitalizing on the defensive holes in his opponent. And I think a guy like Sean Brady, he can definitely tuck his chin, he can level change, he can really wear on Buckley, especially with the gas tank, with the wrestling, wear on those large muscles of Buckley and get him tired and take away the sting in his shots. If Sean Brady can get this fight to the ground, he should be able to control Buckley on the ground like Kamaru Usman did. And let's face it, Sean Brady is a much more dangerous grappler once the fight hits the mat. He's looking to land ground and pound. He's looking for that submission. He's going to have a lot more finishing upside than Kamaru Usman, who's known really for control more than submission or ground and pound victories. He's more of a control wrestler compared to Sean Brady. And Sean Brady, people are going to point to that recent loss to Michael Morales. And they're going to look at that and say, he got knocked out in that fight. But, Morales is a guy that's going to be fighting for the title soon. With Dog of the Week, 3 in a row for us there. I could see that writing on the wall, but his ability to defend takedowns is much, much better than what Joaquin Buckley's is. Sean Brady, a guy here that obviously 5'10" compared to 5'10" of Joaquin Buckley. Not a huge, reach discrepancy in this matchup. He's not fighting a huge, tall 170 here in Morales. He's fighting a guy very similar in height and reach and build. And I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns here, control Buckley on the ground, maybe even land some good ground and pound, and ultimately just wear on that gas tank of Buckley. And I think if he comes out here and gets the takedown early, it's going to be all she wrote for Buckley. I think Sean Brady should be a bigger favorite here, and I think he should be able to pull off the victory, whether that's a late submission victory or riding out top control here for a unanimous decision victory on the judges' scorecards. And let's see if Carlos has Buckley or Brady in this one.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Sean Brady to get it done. I do think Buckley does have the ability to hurt Brady, with the explosive power that he carries at 170. But if Buckley can't catch him with that straight left or the right hook, flying knee, or that, flying, back kick, whatever he threw when he was in midair, which was a great finish. I think it was like a knockout of the year award winner. Like, I really don't know how he's going to beat Sean Brady because Brady's tough. He's pretty durable. He can take some shots too. And I think that, Buckley can throw, but he's not very technical. I think Sean Brady's a little bit more technical, sometimes a little too technical, where his technique looks a little tight. His strikes need to be a little looser. Maybe he can get a little bit more power on it that way, but he's got to have more confidence in it. But he doesn't open up too much. He kind of just throws, and as he throws, he's throwing everything straight. Everything has good technique. It looks sharp, but he's doing it so that he can get that body lock or grab that single leg and run the pipe and get you to the ground. And I feel like he's going to be able to do that to Buckley. And I think that in a couple of those exchanges on the feet, I think that with Sean's technique that Buckley's going to kind of go for broke in one of those situations. Buckley's got great cardio, so I don't expect him to get gassed out or tired or anything, but I do feel that he's going to try to go for broke because he also wants to get the big finish too. And in that point, Brady's going to duck under and probably just get in those hips and take him down, and from there control the rest of the round. And he's got a highly regarded Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game as well, does Sean Brady. And, he can finish Buckley on the ground with ground and pound. He could finish him with submissions on the feet. He could probably finish Buckley with strikes if he gets him hurt or something. But I don't see Buckley just getting knocked out with a couple of combinations from Brady. But I do see that Buckley does have the ability to do that to Brady, put him on Queer Street with one shot and then just come after him and get the finish. But I don't see that happening either. I just see that Sean Brady's going to be able to get him down. And actually, you know what? I'm going to say something on that. Buckley's ability to be very athletic, very explosive. Brady had issues taking down someone like Gilbert Burns. So I don't know how easy those takedowns are going to come, but I do know that he's going to get them because he did get him on Gilbert Burns. And Burns is somebody that has good takedown defense, and he's able to strike pretty decently, like probably to the same level as Buckley. But I'm going to take Sean Brady because I feel that although Buckley probably poses more of a threat on the feet, I think Brady has enough ability to stand with him, and I think he has enough ability to be able to get him down at least one time in each round. And if he can do that, he's going to pull off this victory. So I'm taking Sean Brady to get it done.
And next up at UFC 328, we've got Alexander Volkov taking on Waldo, Salsa Boy, Cortes, Acosta. And I think this is a very close matchup here, but I'm going to ever so slightly lean to Volkov. You go back and look at Volkov's previous performances against Cyril Gane, and even in his fight against Jolton Almeida, he showed a willingness to grapple at 6'7", arguably 6'9". I think he's lying about his height, but the guy is a credentialed grappler. He can take you down, he can reverse position, he can get back to his feet, and on the feet, the guy is a former M1 global champion. He's got a decent right hand, he's got a great jab, nice kicks, and he's been around the block. This guy's got a lot of experience inside of heavyweight MMA, and a lot of people will point to that 37 years old, but the guy is still, getting it done against high-level guys. I think he won that fight against Cyril Gane. Unfortunately, he didn't get the decision, but even then, if you go back and look, he's losing to the best of the best guys in this division, and he's been on a resurgence at 37, and 37 isn't old for a heavyweight. And let's talk about Waldo Cortes Acosta. The guy mostly boxes. He'll throw the occasional low kick, and one thing I did want to point out when doing tape study is when he fought against Rebellis de Spain. A lot of people remember Rebellis de Spain, the tall, very, very tall for the heavyweight division, kickboxer-style fighter. He was going to the grappling. He was mixing in the grappling and the wrestling. So maybe we see Waldo Cortes Acosta here try to get back to the grappling here against a taller, rangier fighter in Alexander Volkov. On the feet, I think Volkov's height and reach and the kicks at range might be the best path to victory here against Costa. Costa's going to have to get inside that range, find a way to be able to get on the inside to be able to land his boxing combinations. And he's not necessarily got the fastest kicks. So I think Volkov has a little bit more in terms of the full arsenal here inside of MMA to be able to get the victory here. He's got much more experience. Costa struggled. Waldo Cortes Acosta struggled against Sergey Pavlovich. Volkov walked him down and was able to land and trade with him, which kind of surprised a lot of people, I think. And I think Volkov here is going to have a willingness to exchange on the feet. He's got more weapons with the kicks. And I think as well that he's got that ability to have the better grappling and the better jiu-jitsu as well if the fight does hit the mat. So give me Alexander Volkov here to get this one done. I think if you go back and look at his recent performances, he should be on a win streak of at least 2 to 3, 4 fights in a row here. Unfortunately, did lose that one to Cyril Gane, but I just don't see what Costa's going to be able to do on the feet with the boxing to be able to get on the inside, to be able to land enough shots to be able to win in the exchanges here. So give me Alexander Volkov here to get this one done. Let's see who Carlos has got in this one.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Volkov to get it done. I think that Volkov has got more weapons on the feet. He's a heavier hitter. Not a heavier hitter in this matchup, but he does hit. He's a heavy hitter. And he has a very kick-heavy game, too. He can keep this fight at range just by ripping to the legs, ripping to the body, ripping up top, just with kicks alone. And they're heavy and they're hard, and that's something Costa's going to have to watch out for. And within this fight, well, his last couple of fights, Volkov's been adding in a little bit of grappling. He did against Gane, and, it wasn't the prettiest takedowns, but he still got the takedowns, and he's done some, I think he's done a grappling tournament as of late, and he got the decision, just trying to keep working on his grappling abilities. And at 37 years old, I feel like that's a good route to go. He's got good technical striking, add in a little bit of grappling, and that could be what he needs to get him to top contendership. But fighting somebody like Waldo Cortes Acosta, who doesn't really have too much to his game. His only bit of wrestling is to stop takedowns, and he uses a lot of boxing, doesn't use a lot of kicks at all. Mainly likes to throw that wild fastball of an overhand right. He throws it like a pitcher because I believe he was a pitcher in baseball. But either way, he throws it over the top. And the one thing I don't like about Volkov striking is that when he throws to the body and he throws punches to the head, because he's always punching down, he bends at the waist instead of bending at the legs. So bending at the knees and the hips allows you to at least move out of the way of that overhand right and get a tilt or an angle. But unfortunately, that's not what he does. So I can see Salsa Boy landing that bomb of an overhand right and just catching Volkov kind of like Derek Lewis did out of nowhere while Volkov's winning the entire fight. But to be honest with you, I feel that if Volkov just stays long, uses a kick-heavy game, whenever Cortes Acosta takes a couple of steps forward, he smothers it, gets him in a clinch, gets himself out of danger, I think he can get this done. I mean, Volkov's He's been fighting for a long time. He's got a lot of weapons. He's seen a lot of different strikers. Cortes is very technical with his boxing, so it should cause a problem. But I do feel that just allowing Volkov to use different weapons, use different means of getting to the victory. I don't think he's going to get a stoppage, but I do think he's probably going to squeak out a decision.
And that brings us to the co-main event here for UFC 328. Joshua Van taking on Tatsuro Taira. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break this one down. Give me Joshua Van here. I can't believe a lot of people are picking Tatsuro Taira in this matchup. Obviously, Taira, a great grappler, needs to work on the striking a little bit. He's got much, much better in terms of the striking, but in terms of the stand-up here, Joshua Van is much better on the feet, and we'll break this one down a little bit in detail on the feet. When you look at Joshua Van's overall skill set, obviously he did win the title from that, kind of unfortunate injury to Alexandre Pantoja. But Joshua Van was in an ascendancy to win, and I had him picked in that fight against Pantoja because of the volume, because of the takedown defense that he has. I think he was going to keep that one on the feet and be the much cleaner striker. He builds into fights. People say that he starts slow, but I think he really gets his reads early in fights, and it allows him to really capitalize on the moments later in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5, where he sees those openings, he sees those patterns and tendencies that a lot of his opponents have. And that's why he comes out a little bit slow, a little bit measured, because he's looking for those openings for him to build as the fight goes on. And I think if you look at Tatsuro Taira, he leaves a lot of openings early in fights. He's a guy that wants to be able to come out and grapple you. And let's face it, if it's kind of grappling or bust, that's really his only path to victory here. And I don't think that Tatsuro Taira is going to have the success he needs to be able to get Joshua Van to the ground. You go back and look at that Brandon Royval performance. Royval was able to take over late in that fight because Tatsuro Taira didn't have the cardio to be able to implement that grappling for 5 straight rounds. And if you look at Joshua Van, he's had excellent takedown defense over the course of his UFC run. Yes, he got knocked out in one of his performances, but he was winning that fight up until he got knocked out. Everybody gets caught. There's no shame in that. And Tatsuro Taira hasn't had a whole lot to offer in terms of the striking, in terms of the knockout power on the feet. And I think Joshua Van is just going to build into this one. He's going to stuff the takedowns of Taira. He's going to have the better striking moments in terms of the judges. And the more he builds in this fight, the more that he's going to see those telegraph shots from Taira coming. I think he's going to scramble. I think he's going to use his ability to be able to get back to his feet. I don't think he's going to play the jiu-jitsu game. I don't think he's going to mix in his own takedowns. He's going to stand there. He's going to pump out the jab. He's going to throw the 1-2 down the pipe. He's going to rip to the body and attack that lead leg of Taira. And even going to the body in this matchup against Taira is going to wear on that gas tank and make it much harder for him to last over the course of these 5 rounds. Give me Joshua Van in this one. I think he defends the belt. And a lot of people are going to have him as the underdog because he didn't win the belt rightfully against Pantoja. That doesn't make him an undeserving champion here. I think he's being highly disrespected. Give me Joshua Van here to get this one done with the boxing combinations, keeping it on the feet, stuffing the takedowns, and being the much cleaner striker with much more output. Let's see who Carlos has got in this co-main event.
Okay, in this one, I'm going to take Joshua Van to get it done. It's a tough pick to take because Taira is also very dominant in what he does, and that's the grappling aspect of the matchup. And, Van, he does have very good striking. That's something Taira is going to have to be worried about. But, the counter aspect of Van is unbelievable. You know, he's throwing punches in between your punches. That's how you counter. You come over the top of him, and you know, he has a good effect on his opponents when he's doing it. You could see him hitting clean, hitting sharp, and it's jarring the body of his opponents as he lands. So that's going to be a problem for Taira. But he's going to have to close the distance, and he's going to have to get Van to the ground, which Taira can do, but in getting him to the ground, Van uses the whizzer very nicely. I mean, he uses it the way it's supposed to be used. You keep your hips, you know, facing the mat, you know, as your opponent's driving into you. But the problem is with the cage being there, Taira's going to drive him right into the cage, and that's going to make him go up the cage, like do the wall walk pretty much, or the cage walk. And he's going to get back to his feet. And once in the clinch, Van does frame off very nicely too. And when he frames off, he likes to throw shots to the body inside, knees to the leg, knees to the body. And that's what's going to make it difficult for Taira, is that Van is going to keep working. And even if he gets him down, which, you know, Taira, I feel he's going to be able to get him down in this fight. I just feel Van's going to be able to get back up, because he's always shrimping out for, you know, to get his hips out and get a little bit more space to get underhooks, to get back up, to get an overhook, to get back to his feet. So what I think is, I believe that Van is busier in certain situations than Taira, and I think he can hurt him in the clinch too, or at least look like he's hurting him, landing clean shots to the body, clean shots to the leg, you know, and I feel that the judges are going to see that he's being busier in the clinch, he's being busier on the feet, if Taira can't just keep him on the ground, which I feel that, you know, Van is always trying to create space on the ground. He's always attacking, his opponent's base. So he's going to be able to get back to his feet. Taira, his wrestling is good, but he does use his strength because he is big for the weight class. He is imposing. So you know his strikes are going to have something behind it, and you know that he's going to be hard to get up from. But I feel that Van is, you know, maybe wiry enough to get out of, you know, get positioned to get back to his feet if he's taken down. And on the feet, it's a no contest. Van's going to be able to open up on him. So I'm going to take Joshua Van. It's kind of a rough pick to take, because Taira, if he gets you down, he can control you. But I feel that Van's on a tear. Taira's on a tear too. I'm going to say that. But I feel that Van, it's his time. He's putting everything together very nicely, and so far nobody's been able to hold him down, even nobody's really been able to take him down and control him. So I'm going to take Joshua Van to get it done.
And that brings us to the main event here for UFC 328. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Sean Strickland taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Give me Chimaev in this one. I know a lot of people are going to point to that high-level takedown defense of Sean Strickland. It's not going to matter here against Khamzat Chimaev. 15-0 for a reason. You know, he comes in and he kills everybody, as he likes to say. I think we don't see anything different here. I think that Sean Strickland obviously has a nice skill set. We've seen him pull off the upset in the past against Israel Adesanya as a big underdog, but I just don't see what he's really going to be able to do here apart from a teep kick and a jab. And let's face it, Khamzat Chimaev isn't going to be worried about a teep and a jab. He's going to get right in the face of Sean Strickland. He's going to shoot relentless takedowns over and over again. And even though Strickland has, you know, over the course of his career had great takedown defense, you know, Khamzat Chimaev has been training in the mountains with some of the best Olympic Russian athletes in terms of the wrestling Olympic gold medalists. He's got some of the Olympic gold medalist coaches that he's training with at altitude, worked on his cardio, and on the feet he has much more power than Sean Strickland. Even though he can get a little bit wild at times, he can get suckered into a brawl, I just think he's going to be the one landing the bigger shots. And I think in there as well, even though Sean Strickland has a slight, you know, sort of reach advantage, slight height advantage for Khamzat, I think Khamzat's actually going to be the much bigger guy in there, and I think he's going to have a lot more success with the grappling than people think. Even though Sean Strickland's takedown defense is good, he hasn't really been able to have to defend off the takedowns from guys like Khamzat Chimaev and the level in terms of the skill gap of the wrestling that Khamzat possesses. And I think if you look at that 15-0 and you go back to that Gilbert Burns fight, he showed that he can take a punch. He showed that he can stand and trade in the pocket. He showed that he's game. He shows that he wants to fight. And I think a guy like Sean Strickland is just going to get overwhelmed underperformed. And even if you look at Dricus du Plessis' performance against Khamzat Chimaev, Chimaev was levels above in terms of the wrestling. And even Dricus du Plessis was able to get takedowns against Sean Strickland. And he doesn't have the control that Khamzat does. So I think Khamzat can come in here, implement the same game plan he always does, mixing in the grappling. And I think once he gets a hold of Sean Strickland, he's going to have success in the grappling. In terms of the striking volume, it's going to be on the side of Strickland. I just don't think that Khamzat's going to be too worried about the volume game of Strickland. He's not necessarily going to be worried about what's coming back at him. I don't think Strickland's going to have the respect of Khamzat, and I think that's going to be his downfall here. I think Khamzat walks through him, crushes him, retains his belt, and has his first title defense here at middleweight. Let's see if Carlos agrees with me or disagrees with me here in this main event.
Okay, in this fight, I know this is going to be a wild pick, but I am going to go with Sean Strickland to get this one done. And I'm thinking maybe I'm saying this because, he shut down Fluffy so easily, but, Fluffy's nowhere near the wrestler Chimaev is, but I do feel that Kamaru Usman is pretty close to somebody like Chimaev. The takedowns aren't as explosive. They both have different wrestling backgrounds. Kamaru Usman has more of a folk style background. Chimaev has more of a freestyle wrestling. But in that folk style, Kamaru Usman's able to hold you down, control, ride the position, get mat returns. But in freestyle wrestling, they're kind of into explosive takedowns, throws, big arcing throws. And the fact is, I feel that Strickland was able to get up, not easy, but he was still able to get up, you know what I mean, and make it. It wasn't a fight at the time. I think Usman just was able to, he was big for the weight class. He's very strong. He just kind of overmatched Strickland. But just the fact that he can't hold him down, I feel that Chimaev's going to have a hard time just keeping Strickland down, and that's going to test the cardio of Chimaev just a little bit. I feel that Strickland being able to get back up is going to cause an issue in the striking department because, yes, Strickland's a good striker and Chimaev can hit hard, but it's a part of the fight where Chimaev is uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable in a certain position in a fight, that's where you start to get tired because now you have to think and now you have to move and you have to react. And just being able to think is going to use energy, and being able to grapple is going to use energy. Now you're striking, using more energy. And I feel that with constantly having to take Strickland down, maybe about 2 or 3 times in each round, he's going to have to struggle to get him down, keep him down, use the energy to try to hold him in place. I feel that Strickland can exploit that on the feet. Once he gets up, he's going to be able to throw in combination, throw that shot to the, that teep kick to the body, throw that jab, shut down close the distance, force Chimaev to have to shoot over and over again. And if he's unsuccessful, he's, shooting takes a lot of energy, and he's going to have cardio issues because he's going to have to defend some strikes, and he's going to have to try to strike back and try to hurt Strickland on the feet. Chimaev does have the power to do so. He's been able to hurt people standing, but I do feel that just the fact that he's able to wrestle. And he does have a very good submission game, does Chimaev. I just feel that Strickland has a good submission game as well. Now, it all depends on can Chimaev just throw it on very quickly and Strickland doesn't see it coming. Yeah, of course he's going to get the finish, but I do feel Strickland's a smart fighter. I think that he doesn't have big power, but the consistency of the shots, kind of like a Nick Diaz, is just he's putting his weight behind it. He's pressuring you. He's forcing you to think. He's forcing you to figure out, how do I slow this guy down? That's all things that weigh in on your cardio. And I feel that in a 5-round fight, by round 3, if Chimaev can't keep him down, he's going to have a lot of issues. So I'm going to take Strickland to get it done. Obviously not too confident in it, but I feel that Chimaev is the better athlete. I feel that he's the better wrestler, but I feel that Strickland can do both things, and he can do pretty much everything else better than Chimaev other than wrestle. And I just feel that watching him versus Usman, I know it was years ago, it was at 170. I just feel that Strickland has that ability. Your technique is only going to get better, and he's going to pose a lot of issues for Chimaev there. So I'm going to take Strickland to get it done. I think he could possibly pull out a late round decision. Who knows? But let's go, Sean Strickland. I think he can get it done.
And there you have it, folks. UFC 328, Chimaev taking on Strickland is all in the books. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. We've got other content on the channel. We've got Dog of the Week, my favorite betting underdog each week on these UFC cards, full card betting guide, quick picks, you name it, we have it. And if you're enjoying the content, let us know what you're enjoying. Let us know what you want to see here on the channel. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.